Good morning. So we're working through Siman Shin Aleph, a very long Siman, and the first 6 Seifim, which we dealt with yesterday, all to do with running on Shabbos and things like that. And now we're going to get into the main theme of the Siman. What is the theme? And that is Hotzah, carrying. Be'ezeh Kalim mutar lotzeis b'Shabbos ve'ezeh mehen asurin. Which kalim, which begadim, which tachshitim can you wear watches, clothes, and things on Shabbos? How does that work in terms of hotzah? Now, if you look at, we're up to Sif Zayin. So the Mechaber starts off, Kol hayotzi b'davar she'ein tachshit. If you go out with something which is not a tachshit, which is not an ornament, ve'ein derech malbush, and it's not an item of clothing, and you carry it in a way which is the normal way to carry it, chayev, a person is chayev for the melacha of hotzah. Now, if you look at Mishnah Berurah, he starts off and he says, "I'm be'alocha masher ksavnu ksas b'psichas l'siman zeh, psich l'siman zeh v'siman shin gimel." So he says, check out the Be'alocha, and I've got a good introduction to this Issa of Hotzah. So let's do that. Let's listen to what the Chavetz Chaim tells us to do, and let's just do it as a nice short introduction in the Be'alocha. So it's the Be'alocha, Dibah Mascha Kol HaYotze. So says the Be'alocha, the Mishnah Berurah, of course, wrote the Be'alocha, the Mishnah Berurah, and the Shatzion. We're going through the Mishnah Berurah, but sometimes we do look at the more extended commentary of the Be'alocha. So says the Be'alocha, Kol HaYotze, Klal. Let me tell you the rules of Dinei Hotzah in this Siman. Or Siman Shin Gimel, and in the Siman which is 2 to come, Shin Gimel, Ki Huzeh. V'davar she'eina malbush, something which is not an item of clothing, v'lo tachshit, is not an item of jewellery, mikri masui, that's called a burden, v'asa min ha'torah, and it is also to carry that min ha'torah. Uv'meizid chayev kares v'shegeg chatas, and a person carries that on Shabbos, v'meizid his chayev kares and shegeg is chayev chatas. V'hainu im ha'yitz yosek derech hotzah b'chol. That means he carries it in the normal way of carrying it during the week. V'im ein zeh derech hotzah kach b'chol. But if you carry it in an unusual manner, mikri hotzah kalach hayad, that's called an unusual carrying. Hotzah kalach hayad u'pata. Aval also midrabanan, it's an issa only midrabanan. V'davar shehu malbush tachshit mutam na Torah. However, of course, an item of clothing, which or a tachshit, an item of jewellery, mutam na Torah, that's no problem. Ela sheyesh bamed kama dvarim masha osru. But there are some times that Chazal prohibited certain malbushim and certain tachshitim. Yesh men she'osru mishum dil mesholfa machve. There are those that Chazal were concerned about, that you might come to take them off and carry them in 4 Amos and Rabbi. The normal understanding of the Gemara is that this is the derech of a woman. Like, have you seen my new item of clothing, my new ring, my new jewellery? And you might take that off and show other people. And therefore there's a concern. It seems like it's more about women, and there's machlokes whether it applies to men as well. There is another area where Chazal prohibited is where the item is very loose. It might just slip off, and therefore you'll come to carry it. So Chazal prohibited that. People will laugh at you. So you can't wear anything which might attract the laughing of others, which will which cause you to take it off, and therefore you might carry. That's things which are also because of marasayin. There's another area where Chazal prohibited, where there could be a chatzitza for tefillah purposes. For chashirin dilma misrami lo tefillah shel mitzvah, and they might need to do a tefillah shel mitzvah. She'ozi tzricha la'asir me'aleh, that she needs to take off this item of clothing. And dilma osi achkach la'asir, and then she may later carry it. For chol dvarim she'enam asuyim lemalbush gomur, but anything which is not for a proper item of clothing, rak la'atzulei tina, for just to prevent dirt. Something which is put over an item of clothing, on top of a tzif, like a scarf or something, that it won't get dirty because of the geshamim. Mikri masu. These things are called masu. They're no longer got a din of a malbush. Achimu malbush gone. But if it's a proper item of clothing, afshu also lahatzam and geshamim, even though it's meant to stop you getting wet, that's mikri malbush v'lo masu. That's not a masu. V'da'oid. The afshahu tachshit gomer, even if it's a regular piece of jewelry, im noisa biyada, if you take it off and you're just holding it with your hand, mikri masu, that's called masu v'derech yitzah v'chayv oleh, and therefore you're carrying it in your chayv. V'zeh v'mashe lokatzi b'sefer tesefer Shabbos v'sha'ar mekomis. Okay, so they're a very useful introduction of the Chavetz Chaim to this.
Yeah. Because it's never not to wear a watch on Shabbos.
Yeah, so watches we'll talk about, yeah. Well, watches we'll talk about. So that's the useful introduction. Good. Okay. So now let's go to the actual sif. So here goes. Sif Zayin. Anyone who goes out with an item which is not jewelry, ve'ena derech malbush, and it's not an item of clothing, chayav, and you carry it in a normal way, you are going to be chayav. V'chol tachshit shehu rafui. Any tachshit which is loose, which could easily slip off and fall. Also, that's v'myotzapato. That is, it's a drabonon that Chazal prohibited that type of clothing. Nor should a woman go out with jewelry which it's her derech to show other people. Pirush l'asira me'aleha v'laharosom, to take it off and to show people. Hagav ayin lekaman siman shin gimel sif yutchesim also afilu b'chotze o b'bayis. Okay, Hilkoch. Therefore, lo yotze ish. Therefore, a man shouldn't go out lo b'saif, not with a sword, v'lo b'keshes, a bow, v'lo b'tris, nor a shield, pirush mogain, v'lo b'alo, nor a club, v'lo b'roimach, a spear, v'lo b'magfaim, boots, pirush, and pirush. No b'kelim. Sorry, she'ena tachshit. Nor with the kelim which are not considered the tachshit. V'myotze chayav chatzas. And if you go out with these things which are not called the tachshit, then you're chayav chatzas. V'lo b'shiryo, nor with armor, v'lo b'kastor, a helmet, pirush kovesh al barzel, v'lo b'magfaim, which are boots, pirush ampilya shel barzel, which are made out of iron. V'imyotze is potter. Shem derech malbush, because all of these things are derech malbush, and therefore it's only an issa midrabanan. Okay, let's stop there and just do the Mishnah Berurah. Okay, so we're up to Sifkot and Yuzayin. Ve'ena derech malbush. Te'ilu haitzah derech malbush, because if you wear it by way of clothing, harizeh lo haitziu k'derech kalamoitziin. That's not the normal way of doing it. You do it b'yodayim and not with not as an item of clothing. Useful reminder: whenever it says chayev in terms of Hilchos Shabbos, im also b'mezid chayev kores or b'shegeg. But if you did it on purpose, then you're chayav kares. If you did it b'shegeg, tahaynu sheshachach Shabbos shelo malachos asura. Those are the two definitions of what shegeg is. Either I didn't know it was Shabbos, or I didn't know this malacha was asa. You sometimes have that. Sometimes, back in the day, years ago, I remember before any Eruvin here in London, sometimes you see Israelis walking down Golden Road carrying like a talis bag or whatever. They're not familiar with Hitzah sometimes because they grow up where there's an Eruv and they're just not aware of a malacha called Hitzah. It's quite a level, but that's what it's referring to. That's called Shegeg. Shegeg is either I didn't know it was Shabbos today, or I didn't know this malacha was also. Chayev chatzas. In that situation, you're chayev b'shegeg, you're chayev chatzas. V'ayin lekam and siman shin lamedalet sif chaf vov ba'ago eichinig b'zman hazeh. Okay. V'im shochach eze dova etzloi. But if you forgot something, you're not chayav for that. There needs to be purposeful carrying. The hainu shemoitzi b'kavana. She'elasheni yodeh she'ayem Shabbos she'melacha zu asura. V'dinei rishus rabim ayin lekamen b'siman shimem hey siv zayin v'mashe kosav nusham. Okay, so very yesodistic words of the Mishnah Berurah here. Also lotzes. So this is going on. Tachshit shu rafui. Something which is very loose, Chazal say you can't go out with it. Dilma Nofel, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotzim Chof. For Osil Asuyah Daladamas Pishus Rabim, you might come to carry it Daladamas and Surabim. Shadarka Leshalfam, nor should a woman go out with jewelry which she may take off and show other people. For Chashin and Dilma Basoich Kach, Osil Asinu Daladamas Pishus Surabim. Now the question, of course, is what about nowadays? Why is it that women they do go out with jewelry, with and that we're not worried about that? But the Gemara the whole time, Masechah Shabbos, Haitzah comes all over the place in Masechah Shabbos, And repeatedly, the concern is exactly this, that we're worried a woman may take off an item of jewelry, shadarka l'shalfon, because she might show other people. So if you look at 18, he says, Val minag hanoshim kayom lotzes petachshitim. Nowadays, the minhag is women do go out with jewelry. V'myesh sibel lahakal machmas. The reason for the perhaps to be makel is shekiyom ein chashash shetovel arosim lachavruseho kivin sherigidas laleches petachshitim. That nowadays the metzias has changed. Women don't generally take off a necklace in the streets and show their friends, etc. So that seems to be less of a concern nowadays. The practice has changed. Okay, continuing the Mishnah Berurah. V'lo b'sayif, a man shouldn't go out with a sword. V'afilim hu chogor b'masnov, even if it's sort of strapped into his belt. Mipnei shederech yitzohu kach b'chol, because that's the way of carrying it in chol, and therefore that's considered carrying. V'lo ba'alo, an alo is a club. Doime lemakol, it's similar to makol, v'roshe ogul k'mei kadur. Yeah, so you can picture that. V'lo b'shiryon, and that means not with armor. Miloshim v'shirin kashkashim, like the scales of a fish. Potter, mikol makom also mishum maras ayin. The concern is over here, maras ayin, sheyachshaduhu haroim sheroitz lilochim b'Shabbos. People think you're going off to battle. V'gam afilu b'chadrei chadorim also, and therefore since there's an issue of maras ayin, even b'chadrei chadorim is also, or kumesh kosav b'sif memhei ayin shom. Okay, good. So let's continue now the mechaba. V'lo yetze b'tfilin. Yeah, we're 2/3 of the way down the page in the Mechaba. V'lo yetze b'tfilin. Nor should a person go out wearing his tefillin on Shabbos. Interesting, because you may come to take them off when you go to the bathroom, and therefore you may come to carry them. V'lo yetze katan b'minal gadol. Nor should a child wear a shoe. Or sorry, we'll see. It's not a child. It's a smaller person should not wear a minal gadol, a shoe which is too big for him. Why? It might slip off and you might come to carry it. You can wear a larger item of clothing. And you can only wear one shoe if you've got a makkah on your other foot. Because if not, because otherwise people will laugh at you. It looks ridiculous. You're walking around with one shoe, people will laugh at you and you might come to take it off. Then you can obviously wear a shoe on the foot which does not have a makkah. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Kotzen Chavov, Lo Yetze B'Tfilin, Mipnei, Umashma D'Beisei Ein Isra Niach Tfilin. So the interesting thing is, the implication of that is, the only problem of wearing tefillin is a problem of carrying it out in the street. But wearing tefillin at home, seemingly, would be okay. But it's only okay if you're doing it l'shaloi l'shem mitzvah. But l'shem mitzvah is also kanal b'siman lamed aleph ayin shom mishnah berurah sif koton hey. Okay, shetzorich. This is going on a person. This is going on the tefillin. Shetzorich la'asirim k'shikonis lebeis hakisei. Says the Mishnah Berurah chaf zayin v'hainu dilma also l'dal adamas, and you may therefore might come to carry it. Umashma to belav haytime elohi also lotzeis bohem. The implication is that apart from that, it's not a problem to wear tefillin. After Kaimelon Shabbos lavs ban tefillin, even though we say that Shabbos is not as man for tefillin, because they're considered like an item of clothing. Shin ches is the halachas of muktzah. Mr. will get there. So obviously they have to deal with the muktzah aspects of tefillin nowadays. That's machlikas. Okay. Cotton b'minal gadol. Hainu adam shehu cotton b'minal shehu gadol. So that's talking about a smaller person wearing shoes which are too big for him. If you look at 21, he says, what about the other way around? What about a larger person, a taller person who wants to wear shoes which are a bit too small? So he says 21, v'gadol harei tzilot says b'minal cotton. So I suppose the point is that you'll be a bit tight and not so comfortable, but you're not concerned you're going to take them off. Yeah, in other words, if you're a smaller person wearing a bigger size shoe, the concern is they'll slip off mela automatically. But if you're wearing shoes which are a bit tight for you, then that would be okay because I guess there's less income. Oh, sorry, what?
You can look at it the other way around.
Yeah. This is killing me, and therefore I'm taking them off. Yeah. Now, but then we say the Mechaba said that this is only a concern with shoes, but when it comes to wearing a bigger item of clothing, that's okay. So what's the chiluk? So if you look there in the next part of 21, he says, "Vatam shemutalot says b'chol gadol ve'in dinner kamina gadol," and it hasn't got the same halach as a large shoe. Kosav Rashi in Shabbos Kuf Mem says, "Shebechol gadol ein chashash sheyipol miatzmei." A larger jumper, shirt, coat, you're not worried it's going to fall off. V'gam ein chashash shemeyavel lahasira. We're not worried you'll take it off. Shalom mistabesh sheyamid aron b'shuk. You're not going to get undressed in the public in the street. Lefi zeh yesh makom lodon sheyeh also lotzes b'meil elyon hagadol b'midasei kivin shebem zeh yesh lochus shemeyavel lahasira. And therefore, if that's the concern, a big coat maybe you would take off. If it's an other item which is close to your body, or a shirt or something like that you're not going to take off. But a larger coat, maybe their taka will be a problem. Okay, then we said you can't wear a shoe, only one shoe, because people will laugh at you and you might take it off. However, if you've got a wound on one foot, to wear one shoe, that would be okay. So he says, because if you've got a wound on one foot, no one's going to laugh at you. That's quite normal that you wear one shoe. Because people will understand you. You can't wear a shoe on the other foot. The makasei because the makkah will demonstrate that's why you're not wearing it. Okay, so that is Sif Zayin, setting out sort of the parameters. Sif Ches. A person shouldn't go out with a needle which is sort of inserted into his clothes, like tailors would do. Whether this needle has got a hole at the top or not. But if a person does go out with this needle, then if the needle has got a hole in it, then you're chayiv. It's an issa hitzah. Is potter. Okay, so let's see the Mishnah Berurah. Lo Yetze. Siv Zemairi. This Sif is talking. Afilu b'stam adam she'ena uman. Not only not a professional, but even a regular person. V'ayin lekaman b'sif yud beis. But big day. Avalim hotzia b'yadei. The whole issue over here is if you're wearing it in your clothes. But if you're walking in the street holding the needle with your hand, then for sure you're going to be chayiv. Chayiv b'chol inyan. In any, whether a man, woman, whether it's got a hole in the needle or not, if you're just carrying it and just with your hand in the normal way, then for sure you're going to be chayiv. Bein she'ein nekuva. Now, what's the svara to be mechalik? So, the machat lo yavi tachshit leish b'chol gavni. A needle is not a tachshit; it's not a piece of jewelry for a man at all. V'lochein yesh isur lekul alma. Therefore, for him, there'll always be a problem. Benekuva chayiv. If there's a hole at the top of the needle, then you're going to be chayiv. Sfirlei l'deyazu. To beish tinikim beisha, that a man and a woman are the same in the same respects. L'kam b'siftes b'shin gimel siftes. To nekuva have a derech yitzah lefrokim. Because if the needle has got a hole in it, then sometimes you would carry it in that way. Because she techuva b'bigdo when it's sort of kept in her clothing. Or maz l'kam b'siftes beis mavua da'afil b'umen pata mavua sham. But Mishnah Berurah, that would explain the Mishnah Berurah. But if the needle has not got a hole in it, then potter. The lav derech hitzah he lo hitzah kashu tachav b'bigdei, because that's not the normal way of carrying it. Therefore, you're doing it b'shinui, and the normal way of carrying this type of needle is ki'im b'yodei. Umashe kosav yeshayimrim behepach, and the svara the other way around. Taimom is the sphere look the beish. Machat nekuva lav derech hitzahi. A machat which has got the hole in the top, that's not the normal way of carrying it. Because she tuchuv bigder when it's put into your beged. Shegnai hulai sheyemru alav shehu chayat. For some reason they'll say it's a gnai that you are a tailor. Avol be'ein nekuva, but if it hasn't got a hole in it, derech ulefrokim af b'chol kashmitzi and b'shuk. Sometimes you walk around with like a toothpick type of thing. You can use it as a toothpick. It all depends on the time and the practice. That changes. If this is the normal way of going out, then it's not called a tachshit. And then have a derech it's also bekach v'chayev, and that's considered the normal way of carrying, and therefore you'll be chayev. The main derech it's also bekach b'chol. Part tavel also it would only be an also innocent midrabanan mishum de'ena tachshit because it's not called a tachshit. For cost of oidim reiv ha'olam ein darken loitzi bekach. Most people don't carry it in this way. Afal pisha anshe makom echod moitzim bekach. Even though a few people do. Part tavel also vatam mishum debot l'daita etza kol adam, because these minority we say bot l'daita. Okay, I think time just for one more sif. A ring. Can a man wear a ring on Shabbos if there's no Eruv, and is there a problem of Hotzah? Says the Machaba, Lo Yetze B'tabas a man must, a person shouldn't go out with a ring, she'eino le'a chosim, which has not got a chosim, which means like a signet, a stamp on it. V'im yotzo, if he goes out, he's chayev. V'im yeshot le'a chosim, but if it does have a stamp, the Rashi potter, the Rabbeinu Tam and the Rambam is mutter. Because that's only called a tachshit for a man. But if it's tachshit for a man or for a woman, then it would be also even for a man. Shin Gimel Sif Yudches. Says the Mishnah Berurah, she'eino le'achoisem da'avirak tachshit le'isha, because it's only a tachshit, a piece of jewelry for a woman. Aval le'ish have a muscle, but for a man to wear a ring, it would seem to be a masui. We're only talking again about where you're wearing the ring on your finger. Because if you're literally carrying it, then you're always going to be chayiv. This is considered carrying even though it's on your finger. Sometimes a woman, says the Gemara, will give her ring to her husband to take to the repairman to fix it, and he will put it on his finger to carry it in that way, and therefore, and therefore, because of that, if a man does wear the ring in that fashion on his finger, that's considered derech hitzah, and therefore he'd be chayiv. Now, l'rashi potter. So if, however, it has a chaysim, Rashi says you're potter, pirish potter, but also midrabanon. Because if it's got a chaysim, then it will be considered a tachshit for a man. Because that's what he wears. He uses it to seal letters. That's his specific signet ring. But the concern is, again, midrabanan, he might take it off and show people. And that's why, in the same way that Chazal made the gezeira for women's jewelry. But the Rambam says it's mutter, and the Rabbeinu Tam, because it's not a tachshit, even if it's got a chaysim, and therefore it's mutter. Says the Mishnah Berurah in Lamed Zayin, the ena tachshit sfir lehu. We're not chayshish for a man that he's going to show off to other people. That's not the way of men. But something which is a tachshit for men and women, Mishum de loy plug rabbanan v'asru gam beish. They make a loy plug, which is a pure tachshit. They make a loy plug, and therefore men and women should not wear it. V'ayin lekam and siman shin gimel sif yudches hainu desham nisboy. Heich linig b'zebizmanenu. How do we practice nowadays? Omash masham dim ein nimches beish hanoise osom. We don't protest against the man who wears a ring. B'chudish regegi kosu sham tebal nefesh yochush la'atzma shelo lotzeis b'tabas klal. And therefore, the Rabbi Kiva concludes that it's just good practice not to go out with a ring at all. He says in 28, now this is the big question. What about a male ring? What's it called? A wedding ring. A wedding ring that some men wear. What about that? So mitzad, whatever, I've got a share on it on Torah anytime about whether a man is allowed to wear it. It's in lo silbash, if that's a problem. From memory, there are 4 or 5 reasons why it's okay. There is certainly what to rely on. I'm not advocating one should, but in terms of lo yilbash, there's no problem for a man to wear a wedding ring because this is miyuchad lemen and whatever ayin shom. But he says over here in footnote 28, but generally, jewelry, the male jewelry, I think is a whole industry nowadays. Shabbos. There is certainly room to be lenient for men to wear this on Shabbos in terms of Hotzah. Even a Baal Nefesh doesn't need to be machmir, and therefore if a man, whatever reason, wants to wear bespoke male jewelry in terms of Hotzah on Shabbos, then that would be certainly what to rely on. Okay.